So when I was in college, graduation really snuck up on me. Now, to be fair, I had studied abroad. I came back for a semester and then graduated early because I was all about getting out of there, so I owed that college less money. But I say graduation snuck up on me because I didn't have a plan. And so then I was like, oh no, it's the end and now I need to find a job. And that shouldn't have been a surprise to me, right? When you graduate college, you do look for a job. But because I didn't have the foresight to look forward and see that, I just settled for the first thing that came across. I was so excited to get my job as a sales manager at a failing Holiday Inn that I ended up not really loving because you can't sell something that you don't believe in, right? But yet I settled for mediocre because I didn't have the foresight to see what was coming in front of me. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Welcome to Diary of a Worthy Pursuit,
where we talk about how to get what you truly want in life and in business.
So the crazy Holiday Inn, beat up, run down, shutters falling.
I wouldn't say shutters falling, right? Like on the surface, everything was okay. It was a little outdated. It needed some work, but like a lot of these things, you're in the service business. You're not just selling the room, you're selling customer service, you're selling events, you're selling the quality of the food, and a lot of that you don't get insight into until you're in it.
Yeah.
Unless you know you want to be in the hotel industry, and then you're kind of checking everybody out before you go.
Sure.
So I really didn't know what I was getting into. Frankly, I was just excited to have a job. And when it was pitched to me in the best way, the director of sales is a wonderful human, but she was in recruitment mode.
Okay.
She's like, you're going to be the face of the hotel to the community. You're like, that sounds cool. I'll be the face of the hotel to the community. Yeah, that sounds like a great job. And then you get in it and you're like, oh, this is not what I want to do.
That is not the place you want to be the face of.
This does not feel good.
No.
Yeah. So a lot of lessons learned there. But I think the ultimate thing that, the high level lesson that I learned is that, hey, you just got to pick your head up every once in a while and see where you're going, because this big life stuff can't just run into you. You need to see it coming.
So who do you think is running that place now? Presuming it's the same place it was.
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Do you think that they just keep going through people, or do you think it's...
Well, hopefully they've remodeled it and improved service.
Okay.
But I don't know. I would say that the management company that was managing it is probably no longer managing it.
Okay. All right. It didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
All
And
right.
writing was on the wall. But what is interesting about that is that in a lot of things, you can't be mediocre in customer service, right? You are either, if you're not great, you might as well be terrible. Because
fair to a point, yeah.
Because the in-between is this like, well, they
Mediocre.
were all right. They're not memorable. So like, I'm not going to go back there.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to tell everyone not to go there, but I'm not going to go back there because it wasn't great. And so if it's not great, then like, what are you doing? Why are you putting your time into
I
it?
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me, my buddies and I went on a trip to Arizona right after high school, road trip.
Yeah.
In my buddy's 61 Buick, and we had his neighbors came with us in a different car behind us, and they only wanted to stop at Denny's and McDonald's the whole trip, and I'm like, you gotta be crazy. We're going across the country, right, hundreds of miles away, in new and exciting places, and we're gonna eat at places that we could get anywhere.
Right.
And it was one of those like, well, their argument was, we know what we're getting. We don't want to get sick at some other place. And my argument was, well, at McDonald's, you're probably guaranteed to be sick.
Yeah, right.
But their whole thing was, we're going after the mediocre that we know instead of striving for something more that we may or may not know. It may be good, it may be not good.
Right.
But I was just like, oh my gosh, it hurt the trip.
Well, but
Painful.
how many people do you know in life, now let's take this to people, to humans, who are in that space, right? They're like, well, I'd rather settle for this thing that I know than reach for something and fail.
Sure. Double you know versus double you don't.
Right, exactly. We feel that way sometimes in politics, right?
Yeah, right.
But I think as humans, we are sometimes scared to take the risk, and so we're just like, oh, mediocrity, that's okay.
Right.
But
There's a fear mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think of the first, I don't want to call it my first job, but my first job there, I was making more than $5 an hour. I ended up getting fired from that job, which is fine. But it's one of those where I was thinking, after I got canned, I was thinking if I didn't get fired, I would have stayed there indefinitely.
Yeah.
Until they went out of business, which they did eventually. But I would have been stuck at that job. Oh, I say stuck, but that's not accurate. I would have been at that job because stuck would be like, hey, I go to work, I punch out, I move on with my life, and then rinse, repeat. Everything's cool. And I would have been stuck in that little rut, I guess, and just happy.
Yeah.
Fine. I was doing really well at it. There's a lot of people that I guess clients and stuff like that I was taking care of. It was fun to a point, but it wasn't, I don't know if I'd necessarily say it was great. There was no room for advancement. So it was one of the, like, I'd be there 30 years or something.
Yeah.
So I guess also it reminds me of the UAW strike that's going on, right? These guys, I remember seeing this picture of these guys with signs, and they all look out of shape, kind of lumpy, frumpy. I'm like, I wonder when the last time these guys smiled was.
Yeah.
Like, what are you fighting for?
Yeah. That's a great point. And again, because when we get stuck, it's hard to see the other side of stuck. We'd rather just be in what we're used to. And so I think with small business owners or folks who want to start a business, this really finds itself playing, and the way I say it, two ways. First is you're scared to take that leap to start a business because you're like, well, what I'm doing is just fine. Like, it may not be great,
just fine.
but it's just fine. I'm sailing along fine. So there's one area where maybe you've got some opportunity to shake it up. But the second area is maybe you've been in business for a few years, 5 years, and you're like, oh, this is smooth sailing. I'm doing all right. I'm not going to rock the boat. What has been working keeps working, and so it's fine, right? You're not ready to take it to the next level, so you're just hanging out here. But I think that those are really two extreme danger zones because when we get stuck in this just fine, we don't know what could be better, and we don't ever want to look back on our lives and think, oh, what if?
Right.
What if I would have done that thing? I was reading something that said there was a nurse who's done a book that talked about, she was talking to people on their deathbeds. They were never talking about like the risk that they took and failed. They were always lamenting on the what if, the thing they didn't do, rather than the risk they took and they failed. Because at least if they took it and failed, they knew. But if they didn't do it, they were always left wondering.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The regret, the feeling. Interesting. I like that. I was just reading the book. Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. I think a lot of it stems from The Art of War, though, by Sun Tzu. So it had a saying that said, never fight your last war. So, and last is, we have to define that a little bit. So not last like ending, but your most recent one. So every challenge that you have, what you did to get over that challenge is not necessarily going to be what can get you over this next one. So it's interesting because I'm like, oh, that's polar opposite of having systems in place.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it's also an awareness that you can pivot or you can adapt
or
to
optimize.
Stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Where you're willing to do that because you're not mediocre, but because you're willing to change or adapt.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, kind of fun thing.
That is a really fun quote. Well, today we're going to talk about how to not be mediocre, right? We talked about the reasons maybe why you would want to escape this mediocrity trap, but I think step one is just knowing where you're going, right?
Huge one.
There's a lot of places that you can go, but if you don't know which one you want to get to, it doesn't really matter what path you take, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting when we were talking about this before, and you mentioned the goal thing. I was like, oh, of the people I know that have easily definable goals, you can tell that they're striving for something, so they're pushing themselves. If it was an easy goal, like, hey, I want to grab this cup, whatever. But if there's something like, I want to own 5 billion cups or 5 trillion cups, I'd have to really push myself in order to get whatever place to store 5 trillion cups or something like that. So I'd have to advance as a person, get some knowledge, and meet some people, and do all these things that is going to help me grow as a person. But if I have no goal or mediocre goals, I'm not going to push myself at all. Yeah. I'm going to sit in front of the TV and be just fine with that. Yeah. So, boo.
Well,
unless it's a podcast.
Maybe you're listening rather than watching. But we were talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger and how he's just releasing a book, or has recently, and I was listening to him on a podcast, and one of the things he talked about is vision, and how if we don't have a vision, that it's just easy to go through the motions and just stay status quo. So the example that he used is he went from just being a high school kid to saying, I want to be Mr. Universe. And people were like, maybe you should check your expectations. Maybe you should be like Mr. Austria or Mr. Europe before you aim for Mr. Universe. But he was like, no, because I knew I wanted to be Mr. Universe, when I showed up in the gym, I knew what my goal was, and so I had a purpose for being there. It's like, I don't know how many people I've seen in the gym who are just there to be there, who are just going through the motions, and so any little thing will do. And so he's like, I wish I could just shake those people and say, just have a goal. Like, even if it's like, I want arm muscles, or I want to like be able to run a mile, whatever it is, just have some kind of goal so you know what you're working toward, so you're striving, to your point.
Yeah, he had that thing. I read his autobiography, and he was talking about how the bodybuilders that he saw in the gym a lot were the laziest people he's ever met. Because they were in the gym, and outside of the gym, they just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And he was always pushing, got into real estate, did the, he was in masonry and stuff like that, always trying to advance. Yeah, super cool.
Well, and what I love about that is that I do feel that when you are filling your cup, when you're working on yourself, if you're doing it in the right way, then as you fill up, the overflow fills everything else. So it's not like hey, if I'm going to pour myself into the gym, then the time I put in there is a sacrifice that I'm going to take away from my family, from my business, all these other things. What I've found is that the more you put in there and you invest in yourself, that overflow really falls into those other areas of life.
Yeah.
You're not taking away, because when you're striving in one place, you show up better in the other places.
Fair. I think it's also good to, even Schwarzenegger as an example, that you inspire other people.
Yeah.
So think about when you strive for something, other people, your kids, whatever, spouse, friends, family, whatever, see you striving for that thing, and then it helps them want to strive for something else as well.
Yeah. You know, you never know who's watching.
Right.
Right? I mean, we always know our kids are watching, but there's, even in your business journey, I find it interesting. I was just talking to someone who's a LinkedIn content creator yesterday. She was talking about how just because people don't engage, like, or whatever in your content anywhere, not just on LinkedIn, doesn't mean they're not watching, doesn't mean they're not paying attention. So, you know, she's like, I had somebody reach out to me who's like, I've been following you for years. I feel like I know who you are. And she's like, I had no idea who this person was because they'd never interacted with me before, but they were watching.
All right.
And every step that I took, because I pushed for so long, they saw me striving.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool.
Isn't it?
A little creepy, but cool.
I guess when you're starting a business, you got to hope that people are watching, right?
Yeah. I like to tell my employees that if you consider what it took for you to get here, and here at this job, I mean, that's part of it a little bit, but just here where you are in life, right? We have access to tons of stuff, all the information at your fingertips.
Right.
If you want food, you got food, man. It's everywhere. You want to get somewhere, drive, fly, train, whatever, transportation's everywhere. And I think, what if you went back 100 years or 200 years?
Yeah.
I was even just reading something about Ben Franklin had a place in London. It's the last remaining place where Ben Franklin lived. That's still up.
Okay.
He was there during 1770s, whatever. There's a 16-year period where he had a wife and kids in the U.S. and he only saw them one time.
Oh, wow.
And they said it like, look at this terrible person, right?
Yeah.
What a terrible dad. And strong argument could be made there to a point. But I'm like, what does it take to cross the ocean in 1774 or whatever? Like, that had to be a huge undertaking.
Right.
People dying, starving, all this kind of stuff, stores in your wooden sailing boat.
Yeah.
Right? Versus now, you want to go to London, no big thing. We'll buy a ticket, we'll be there in whatever.
8 hours.
Yeah, boom, just like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to say, like, what would it would have taken months for him to get there, months to go back, and he just had goals that didn't necessarily align with that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
So in this era of access, mediocrity is a choice.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
Huge.
I think there are, to your point, and there are points in history where we just didn't have access. But now with this access, inaction in and of itself is a choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. A decision not to make a decision is
Right.
a decision. But I feel like, to me, it's like if you put leftovers in the fridge, if you just let them sit there, they're going to become fuzzy, moldy, and gross. You got to throw them away, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a little bit with people. If they don't take action or do something, freeze, I don't know, do whatever, however far you want to take that analogy.
Yeah.
If you don't do something, they're going to get kind of moldy and lame.
Yeah.
So they
Throw
have
them
to
in an
take,
ice bath.
Yeah, right.
Those morning ice baths that everyone's into right now. Yeah.
Super cool. Yeah.
All right. So step one, have some goals, have some kind of vision for your life. Step 2 on how to not be mediocre is just, again, thinking about those people who are around you. So I don't remember who popularized this idea, but maybe it was Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
But the idea that you think about your life in your eulogy, right? So fast forward to the end of your life and then picture, who would be at my funeral? Who would be there? Who would be celebrating my life? What kinds of things would they say about me? What do I want them to say? Not what would they say if this happened tomorrow, but what would I want them to say? And then start planning your life such that you're building toward that, like ideal version of you or future version of you, right? But the goal of legacy, right? The goal of legacy, what are you leaving behind? Because then you have something to work toward. And that idea of like, well, your kids saying like, oh, Mom was a deadbeat who never chased her dreams. Like, that'd be soul crushing if I heard my kids ever say that. So
man, somebody would sit up from their casket.
Yeah, right. I need some more time. But yeah, that's one of the things that I've heard is you want to see a place of wasted dreams, go to a graveyard. Because there's so many dreams that we don't take action on. But when you live life intentionally of saying, at the end of my life, what do I want to have accomplished? How do I want to leave the people in my life feeling? You know which direction you're headed a little better.
All right. That's cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
So what do you want people to say at your eulogy?
I want people to say that they felt loved and they felt like I gave them some grace. I inspired some change.
Oh.
Yeah. How about you?
Oh, man. Inspired some change. Can I copy yours?
Sure.
I don't know about the grace thing,
Yeah.
but inspired some change. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would joke with people when I was doing my coaching, saying like, I don't care if you think that I'm a jerk, as long as you understand that what I said came from the heart and my experience, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I've seen or experienced.
Right.
And that you actually make the change. If you hate me for it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, I think that's another little nugget here is that do you want to be liked or do you want to be respected? Do you want to be liked or do you want to go after your goals, right? There's this whole idea of I need to be the good girl or the good boy and not ruffle any feathers, right? Like, who cares? At the end of the day, you have you and only you and your family or whoever you decide to surround yourself with, right? So what are you willing to settle for, essentially?
Right. That's totally it.
Yeah.
What is the standard that you're going after or
Right.
willing to accept?
Oh, that's a great point. So another idea here on how to not be mediocre is to raise the standard.
Right.
Raise the floor, right? Because you're only able to accomplish the things in which you believe you are able to accomplish. So if you don't think you can have $1 million business, you're never going to have $1 million business.
Right.
And so it's the story you're telling yourself about what you can accomplish. My poor child. We're at the playground yesterday. We're killing some time before a parent-teacher conference, and we're doing this challenge around the playground. He goes down the slide. He climbs up. I have to do what he does, kind of like horse. If I can't do it, I get a letter. But not with basketball because he's 6.
Okay.
So it's climbing slides and monkey bars and zip lining stuff. And so there's one of these rolling slides. Have you seen the rolling bar slides?
No.
There's like 100 rolling bars, and as you go down, your butt shakes as you go down this thing.
All right.
And I think it's meant to be more for little kids. But so you go down this thing.
Probably.
And then he climbs up this thing, and I'm like, how in the world am I going to do that? I'm going to fall on my face and break my nose, right? But so I'm like, how do I do this? How do I go through? And so he's explaining it to me, blah, blah, blah. And I get to the top, and I hear, see, I believe that you could do it, and that helped you believe you could do it, and you did it.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, do you ever just hear your own words come out of your children's mouth? And you're like,
usually they're 4-letter, but it's okay.
You are listening, right? Good or bad, you are listening.
Right.
But it's like, well, it's the story that we tell ourselves, right? So as much as I'm trying to help him instill a positive story, good or bad or whatever happens, it's a good reminder for us too to believe that like, hey, I can accomplish what I think I can accomplish.
Yeah, believe to achieve kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I have from Tony Robbins thing, I don't know if that's a Tony Robbins originated, but I heard it from him. The whole if you can't, then you must. I was at a park with my kid, and he did running and then jumping onto a swing on his gut. And then doing some flying thing. And I was like, if you can't, then you must. And it's interesting, fun, heard a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those where you have to, because otherwise what are you showing your kid?
Right.
That it can't be done, or I'm not willing to do it, or something. So you got to go.
Right. Yeah, so I think a lot of us tell the story to ourselves of like, well, I'm just not ready. Or or what if I fail, or I was just not meant for that. And so I challenge people to just say, well, is that empowering or not?
Right. Totally
because
fair.
we all have these limiting beliefs versus liberating truths, right? So if you try to check yourself in the moment and be like, I could never start a business, and you'd be like, well, why? What is the limiting belief there? Like, I'm not good with money. Let's say that's your limiting belief. Okay, then how do you turn that into something that's more empowering, that's a liberating truth of like, I am willing to learn to be good with money so I can leave a legacy for my family.
Yeah.
What is something that's the flip side that turns that into something that powers and motivates you instead?
Liberating truth. I like that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, that's a Michael Hyattism.
All right. Limiting belief. I've certainly heard of that.
Yeah.
But liberating belief. Liberating truth. I'm sorry.
Liberating truth.
Love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Huh. The other thing I guess that I see in this is a lot of people going on that like or are comforted by playing the victim.
Yes.
I can't because of X, something that's completely out of my control.
Right.
Or I will after New Year's, right? This arbitrary date that has nothing to do with whatever it is I'm trying to do.
Right.
I'm going to place that, and so I can kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
Or I can't because whatever. That may or may not have anything to do with what you're doing or trying to do.
Yeah.
Or maybe even thinking about doing.
True. So getting rid of your victim mentality, right? Trying to check yourself and just be honest and say, am I playing the victim card here? And then also feeling that, well, I need to be active in my own rescue because no one's coming to help me. I think I've talked about that before on this podcast, that my health journey was one of those areas where I didn't feel like conventional medicine was going to help me, and I wasn't going to play victim of that. I decided, no, I need to be active in my own rescue and take ownership of this because no one else is going to, right? So that idea of if there's a dream in your heart or there's a business that you have and you want to grow, no one's going to do it for you.
Right.
But again, it's first identifying that track before you can change it.
Right. Yeah, you can't outsource your push-ups, right?
Yeah, right.
Do it. Can't hire anyone else. That's interesting. How many people have you met or heard about that had a similar situation to you that just rolled over and said, I guess this is how I'm going to live? Or
way too many. That's where the health coaching industry thrives.
Right.
And it's a growing industry, and there's plenty of space because so many of us have been taught that this is, you outsource your health. Like you say, you can't outsource your push-ups. In theory, though, we've been taught, well, if there's something wrong, go to the doctor.
Yeah, they'll fix it like a light switch.
Right. Just take this pill, everything will be better, right? And we know that that's not the case now, but it's how previous generations were programmed, or even depending on your environment when you grow up, your environment programs you. So I'd say that there's a really high majority of the people in our country operate in that way.
Totally. Yeah, I was trying to think what the statistic was about the number of people that are on prescription drugs routinely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, that's why we have a whole industry that makes
It's insane.
billions or trillions of dollars.
Yeah, I remember reading that statistic. I forget what it was. I want to say 60 or 70%. It's a lot. And I remember I was in a room, networking room, and I'm looking around and I'm like, can I really imagine 70% of the people here routinely taking a pill of some kind?
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, I have a very hard time wrapping my head around that. And then I thought, how many people here are taking a pill for something that they're still not fixed?
Yeah, they're just masking it.
Yeah.
Right, and that's another really great point, is that we tend to settle.
Absolutely.
We tend to think that, hey, I can't get that thing, so I'm just going to settle right here where I'm comfortable. Right, I just had, I'm doing this 90-day challenge with some folks as we push toward the end of the year. And
70, you said?
90.
90.
3 months, 90-day challenge. We're pushing toward the end of the year. And I had them do this thing where we drew a horizontal line. And on the left side, we wrote an F. In the middle, we wrote an A. And on the right, we wrote an S. And then, so if you're picturing that on this continuum, between the F and the A was comfortable and things I like to do.
Okay.
And then between the A and the S were uncomfortable and things I don't like to do.
Okay.
So if you imagine, kind of like a fulcrum here, the F is failure, and then the A is average, and the S is success. So the things that are keeping you stuck between average and a failure is doing the things you like to do and the things that keep you comfortable.
Oh.
And the things between average and success that will move you up are the things you don't like to do and the things that make you uncomfortable. So it's being comfortable getting uncomfortable. I was doing a half marathon training program, and I got it on Audible. And one of the things that this trainer said in my head, because you listen to her the whole half hour, 45
while
minute
you're
run,
running?
whatever. Yeah, it was
Oh, that's
really
clever.
cool. They talk to you in your brain, and she'd give you mantras and things like that. And it was like, we're training you to be comfortable getting uncomfortable.
All right.
So you don't need to feel like, oh, 9-minute mile is easy. I'm not a fast runner. 9-minute mile is easy. You just need to feel like it's uncomfortable, but I can do it anyway. And that's what's going to help you make progress.
All right. I did a half marathon. I don't know if I told you this before, but I figured I was running, when I run just a few miles, I'm doing whatever, 7.5, 8-minute miles, which is not a big, just like 2 or 3 miles at a time.
Sure.
So I was doing the math, and I'm like, 8.5, 9 minutes. And so I stand by the card where they're holding, right, for this 8.5, 9 minute. And I'm looking around, and it's probably a 45-degree day. And I'm standing amongst the people that are in the really short shorts and the racer tank tops. And I'm like, no, no, I don't belong in this group. And then the whistle blows, and I'm like, I guess I'm going with this group. And they left me in the dust within 200 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was surreal. But it's funny when you say slow miles. Like, I thought I was fast. But
Oh my gosh, no. I'm
No.
not that. I'm not that at all. I'm in it for the scenery and the accomplishment at the end.
yeah, I mean, in the end, something like that is you versus you.
Right.
So that goes to the whole mediocrity thing, right? How many people are racing or understanding that they're advancing, doing something like that?
Yeah.
Or I guess mediocrity is more an internal thing, I guess, to me, than an external thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it shines externally as a result. It's
right.
Not, but it's not, that's not the main thing. It's more in here.
Yeah, what's the story that's going on in your head? Absolutely. And I think that too many of us get stuck in this comparison trap. And
Right.
then we're like, well, it's okay for me to settle where I am because I'll never be those short runners in the
No
marathon.
desire.
So why am I even trying, right? And if we get stuck in that comparison mode, then it feels easier for us to settle. Like, well, I'm going to
Right.
be mediocre because I'll never be that. And so this is just where I am. But the idea is that, again, you're not competing against everyone else. You're competing against yesterday's version of you.
Right.
I used to have a sticker on one of my water bottle that I'd carry around with me at my corporate office, and it just said, beat yesterday.
Oh.
That's all you got to do. Like, I don't have to be you running 7.5-minute miles. I just got to be better than I was yesterday.
Right. Beat yesterday. I
Yeah.
like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I guess when I was standing there looking, I remember thinking, what do these guys have to do that?
Yeah.
And am I willing to?
Fair.
So I have goals and I have things that I want to do and all that kind of stuff, but they're not. This was just like, I want to say that
Yeah.
or just me, I finished a half marathon kind of thing.
Yeah.
I did zero training, shy of I run every day, but only a couple miles. So I had friends that are just like, you didn't train at all? And my body certainly told me when I was done, dude, you should have trained.
Yeah.
But it was one of those like, no, I'm not against it. Kudos to them. That's their
Right.
thing. But you can't have all of the goals.
Right.
You
Well,
gotta
and I think
pick
that
and choose.
that's a really good point, that it's okay to be mediocre in certain areas of your life if there are others where you're striving, right? Like, I can't have 9 goals in 9 different life domains and expect to chase all of them at the same time. That's just unrealistic.
Right.
Right? I can't have 9 focuses. I can have one, right? Like, the one thing that I'm focusing on is this. And I'll have some overflow and the rest of my life will improve because of it. But, if I'm really trying to grow my business to $1 million, let's say, training for a half marathon is probably not the best thing for me to do right now.
It'd be difficult. You only
Yeah.
get 24 hours in a day.
Absolutely. We all get the same.
Yeah. True story. This has been Diary of a Worthy Pursuit.
Where we talk about how to get what you truly want in life and in business.